Hi friends, welcome back to my crafty hen house. My name is Elaine and I have you in my craft room today. I'm going to go over some instructions to make this adorable lamp. It is a battery operated lamp that you can put anywhere in your house, in your kitchen, in a living room, on a little table. This one actually has some turkeys on it and the design goes all the way around. We have an adorable little lampshade on it and it is battery operated. So adorable. And if you can see inside, we have some tiny little lights throughout the inside. I also have another style that I created, and this is done in this size with a little hanger. And this says Merry Christmas on it. So cute for the holidays, and it has a little light on the inside. So let's get busy and I'll show you exactly what you need to create this craft for your holiday decor. First, you have to decide what container you're going to use for the project. And I used a quart mason jar for this project. And you can virtually use any type of glass container that you choose. It can be an old mayonnaise jar. You just want to make sure that the top is a wide mouth top so that you can get your candlestick in there, your little lights in there. The smaller openings are more difficult. You can also use the small little jelly jars. That is what I used for this size project. We used a small one, but for this one we're going to use the quart size jar. You're going to need to get some Mod Podge. Now Mod Podge is a product like a glue, and it's used for your paper products, attaching them. You can also get a Mod Podge that works on fabric, and you could do this project with a really nice fabric. I've used this before, cutting pieces and putting them on terracotta pots, and it works really good. But for today we're going to go ahead and we're going to use a Mod Podge for your paper products. You're going to get yourself 3 paint brushes. We're going to use a soft bristled larger paintbrush. This is a more stiff bristled, the same size. I would say this is about 3/4 of an inch, and a small little paintbrush. And you're going to need to get a pair of scissors. You're also going to need maybe some decorative jute or silk ribbon, some greenery, and that is going to be what you're going to use to attach around the top. I also applied a small little button here, and you can use a glue gun to attach this jute rope around the top, or you can use sticky dots or some regular Elmer's glue if you have a fabric that you want to use, or a silk ribbon. But I use a hot glue gun for this jute, and it turned out really cute and holds the button in place really good. The other element that you're going to need for your jar, if you want a jar that lights up, would be one of these candlesticks. I use these during the holiday. And you simply add a couple AA batteries inside, and when you twist the top, they light up. That's what's used inside of this little jar. In addition, you're going to need one of these little lampshades if you're going to make a lamp. And this lampshade is 2 inches across. This is 6 inches at the bottom and 5 inches in length, and you can get these on Amazon. They were about $6. And you can see how I've applied my candle on the inside of the jar. I also have a small strand of little mini lights, and I have hot glued the controller right on the side of this candle right here, so that I don't have to reach in and remove. You can see the little tea lights, or not tea lights, little sparkle lights all lit up inside. And this comes out of the top. I've glued the base down at the bottom. but you can also remove this because it is on a stand. And to shut it off, you can just reach in and hit the little switch for the little sparkle lights, and the top of this candle, you just simply untwist it. The shade has a little metal attachments on the inside that spread that you can just put right over top of the bulb, and it fits just perfectly fine right inside, just like that. And this is the candle. Again, you just twist it and to shut it off. And you're going to need to have a little bit of water, just enough for the small paintbrush when it's time to use that, as well as for separating our final material. And that is the material that we're going to use to apply to our jar. We use napkins. Now you can get any design of napkins. These are 2-ply holiday napkins. This napkin has pumpkins on it, really adorable. You can get Christmas tree napkins. This is a holiday napkin with the gold wording, so pretty. And then this is the napkin that I used. This is my turkey napkin. Once you have chosen the napkins that you would like to use, you want to make sure that they come in 2-ply. And they will say right on the back of the package whether it's 2-ply or 3-ply. 3-ply is fine as well. It's a little bit more difficult to work with than the 2-ply. And what you'll do is when you open up your napkin, you're going to see that you have the same designs on the top and on the bottom. And depending on the size of your jar, now you can get a jar this size. This is a 1/2 gallon jar, and you will see that the print goes from all the way from the top to the bottom. So you're going to need to cut your piece of napkin according to how much space you need at the top. You don't want to shorten the napkin too much. So with this size of a jar, this quart size jar, I was able to determine that this napkin cut right in half was the perfect size that I needed. And to begin with, you'll need to take your napkin and separate it from the 2-plies. So that's when I asked you to get a little bit of water. You're going to dip your finger in the water, and you're going to separate the 2-plies from one another. Now I'm going to turn the camera so I can get you down in my work area and show you exactly how this whole project goes together. So we've chosen our jar. We're going to use a quart-size jar. We have our Mod Podge, our paint brushes. We've chosen our napkin, and let me show you how we separate the 2-ply. So I dip my finger a little bit in the water, and I go to the edge of the napkin. You have the print side, and then you have the back side, and you're just going to pinch and pull apart. And you may have to do this a couple times, not too much water on your fingers, until you separate the 2 pieces. And there you see how they separated. You want to be careful when you're separating, because when these 2-ply or 3-ply are put together in the factory, they're press stamped, and you don't want to tear your image on the other side. So once you've separated the 2 pieces, you're going to carefully, completely separate them all the way across the entire napkin. And you just do this a little section at a time. And you just want to make sure that you're not going to tear your design. You don't have to worry as much about the back piece. And just keep going until you get your napkin completely separated. Once it's completely separated, that'll be the time you decide what you want, what image you want to be displayed on your jar. And we just keep going. And there, you're fully separated. Now you can set the back apart, and then you have the full front of the image. Now with your jar, since this is a quart jar and this image is pretty substantial, but it covers the jar nicely, we're gonna set the piece of tissue on the jar, and you're gonna kind of roll it over the bottom, and you're only going to need the image up to this bottom rim of this glass. So you wanna make sure that your image is centered on your jar when you're applying it. So that looks about right. So we know that this tissue will fit our whole area that we wanna cover. Now, the second step is to make sure this tissue goes completely around, and which it does. It goes completely around to the other side. However, you can see that where the seam is, you can cut out this little bit of white right here, so this turkey's head pops out, or you can fold it on top of the other turkey when you get ready for placement and cut out around the tail, so you're not cutting off the tail. And I'll show you on the little light that I had done, where you can just see the seam on the back, and you see where I had cut out this area where it overlapped, so that his head landed right on top of the tail without cutting either one of them off. And that doesn't need to be adjusted right away. You can do that once we've started this process of putting it in place. Now that we've determined that we have the right size tissue, the right size container, it goes completely around, the image is going to be centered with our project. Now that is not, when you're doing a project with, say, a print like this, that is not as imperative to get it, the image centered, because you can see you're just primarily going to save all of this beautiful holly leaves around the top of the jar, which would be beautiful. And then the words can just, you know, just trail off down underneath the jar. This looks like this would have to go this way, actually, because of the words being straight up and down. So it's really important when you choose your product material that you're choosing the right size. Say, for instance, if you did this Christmas tree, of course, you're not going to use this jar because it's too, the jar is too small. However, you can use this quart size jar, and that would be beautiful. So now that we're getting ready to prepare our jar, and you're going to open your Mod Podge, and you're going to take your paintbrush that has the really soft bristles, and we're going to put Mod Podge on this entire jar. We're going to cover all the sides up to this upper rim, and you can just section off that upper rim, and we're going to move quite fast, because you want your Mod Podge to be tacky when you get ready to apply the one ply of your design. So we're just going to go around the complete jar. You don't have to go all along the bottom. Give yourself that opportunity to have some area that's not covered with glue for your hands. And the Mod Podge can be added as we get ready to go down around the bottom of the jar. So you're just going to make sure that you're covered quite consistently on all areas and keep turning and going. And it takes no time at all to get your little jar covered. And there you have it. So go ahead, and now that you're completely covered with your Mod Podge up to the bottom rim, and it's nice and covered thickly, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to attach our 1-ply. So you'll have to determine where you want this placed. And we know that we have plenty of opportunity to get our turkey right in the middle and decide how that's going to fit. So let's just put this on here. We're going to move him down, and you can see we have him right in the very center of the jar, just like this. So go ahead and push down this one side, working very carefully with your dry finger, and you're just going to push outwards as you go around. Keeping it nice and taut. Don't pull it too tightly because you'll rip the tissue. It's very, very fine. And we're just going to keep working it all the way around, pushing it into that under rim of the glass. And we're going to stop almost to the end, and then we're going to turn and work on this other side. We're going to get both sides of the tissue to meet up with one another. And don't worry if there's little folds and little bends. You have a square piece of tissue paper working with a rounded surface of a jar. You're going to get little creases, but that gives it some beautiful character when the light shines inside. So let's keep going. And now we're at that place where we had the turkey's tail meets up, and we had the other end of the turkey to meet up with his head crossing over the turkey's tail. So then what you can do is you're going to take your scissors, and we'll just trim out ever so slightly. And we're going to trim out above his head and across the tail. And so he meets right on top of the turkey's tail here. You can trim that very finely if you like, but once you put Mod Podge on here, it's going to start to blend in. It's not that important. So let's just keep working the Mod Podge down. And now we've pretty much got our tissue all covered onto the Mod Podge. Now what we'll do is we have some excess on the bottom. We're not going to cut this right to the jar. We're going to let it wrap around. So kind of determine how much you need to cut off. And it looks about, this is about 1 inch to cut off. So then what we'll do is just go ahead, and we're just going to cut about 1 inch off all the way around this jar. Because you will fold your fabric over with Mod Podge as well. There you go. And then we'll fold this over. Now what we're going to do is we're going to address the top where this rim is. And this is where your little paintbrush comes in. We're going to take our small little paintbrush, dip it in your water, with just a small amount of water, and you're going to go on top of this crease right here. And when you do that, it's just like tissue paper. That little crease with that water will allow you to pull that tissue paper away. So you're going to, again, push it into the crease, get a little bit of water and just go right across that seam and then pull the tissue paper away. Let's do all the way around. Being careful. You can also take, if you get this wet, you can also lay your paintbrush in the crease and just pull the tissue paper with your thumb, and that gives you a nice straight line. But don't worry if you get a little bit, you can't make a mistake when you do this project. It's just, they're just so beautiful when they're completely done. And I love the projects when there's no wrong way to make a craft project. Everybody has different taste and likes, and each one is unique in their very own way. So there, we have all of our paper removed from the rim, and we're going to just go ahead and use your finger and tuck that paper underneath that rim, and you'll start to see it'll take shape underneath the rim. All right, now when that's all finished, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our Mod Podge again. Open your Mod Podge back up and get your nice soft bristled brush, and you're going to start applying Mod Podge again, and you're going to go the direction of how you overlapped on the back. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to start with this Mod Podge, laying it on quite thickly and going completely around. This is the time where you can go ahead and go across the bottom of your jar and push your edges over as well. This type of a project is good for even young people. If you start out with a smaller jar to keep their interest, you can do this as a little project. They can personalize it and do their own things that they like to do, their little cartoon characters or pictures of their toys. I've even seen them done with regular photographs, and those are just beautiful during the holidays. They're a little bit more difficult to see light shining through, but they are really, really pretty, and they make a really nice, just a cookie container or candy container on the counter with all the beautiful pictures on them. So just keep going around this jar and applying some pressure, but not so much pressure that you're going to pull the tissue paper off your jar and tear it. You just want to just keep going around. And this is going to dry so nicely that it's almost like a clear coat. And I would suggest to let it dry for, you know, at least 4 to 6 hours before you decide to add any other embellishments to it. And that is pretty much covered. The jar is completely covered with your Mod Podge. Now this is the time that I generally take my nice stiffer bristled brush, and again, going in the same direction as you applied the tissue, you're just gonna kind of go over top of it, and this will smooth out any heavy wrinkles. I don't mind the small slight wrinkles. They add character, and they're very, very pretty when the light shines through them. and you want to just work quickly, not applying too much pressure, because now the glue is beginning to set up, and you'll pull the tissue and twist it, possibly even tear it if you work it too much. This is just kind of setting everything in place and making sure everything is adhered. Go around your bottom and pulling that in the direction towards the bottom, and that way you have a nice seal on the bottom. You can see that. So at this point, what I'll do is I will let this jar sit overnight and completely dry, and then we'll come back tomorrow and go ahead and finish up the jar and decide what we want to do around the rim, decide what kind of topper, if we don't use another shade, and add a couple more steps to the process to make sure that it's nice and dry and secure for your counter. So I will check back with you tomorrow and we'll complete this project. So it's been 24 hours since we put the Mod Podge on our jar and secured this tissue from the 1-ply napkin down. And as you can see, it has quite a white hue on it. And what I wanted to do with mine was knock that hue down. And you can see the difference with this one, where it's kind of antiqued. And I'm going to show you exactly how I got that look of the antiquing. To achieve the antique look, what I used was this wood stain, and this is called a red oak. You can use any color that you have on hand. And what I do is I shake up the container just slightly, because the only stain that I'm going to use is from the lid itself. And you might want to put a pair of gloves on when you do this, so that you're careful not to get it on your hands or your clothing. And you're only going to use just a small amount. So I take a paper towel and I bunch the paper towel up, and then I just slightly dab it into the lid. And then what you can do is you take your jar and you just start buffing it on your jar. And you go in a circular motion and you continue all the way around the jar, just ever so lightly. And you can see the variation in the color that this antiquing does. So then what you'll do is you'll just go around ever so lightly around the jar. Now you can leave the tissue paper peeking through as white if you prefer. I just wanted a little bit of a deeper color to go with my fall colors of the rest of my displays. And you can see it only just takes moments to do this. And then you're going to go ahead and you'll let this dry up nicely. Just go around, circular motion all the way around. And that's as simple as that. That's all it takes, just to knock down the white ever so slightly. You can go back and you can do more if you like, if you want it a little bit darker, but I just kind of wanted just a slight knockdown so you can see how similar that they are. And once that's dry and no longer tacky, you can move on to your next steps of finishing up your jars. If you want to do the candle, you just take your candle, hot glue the end, and you're going to set it right down inside your glass jar. You can drop your little lights in like these. They come on a wire with a little button operator and they light up. And you can I have a smaller one where I hot glued the mechanism right on this candle, and then you can just reach in and turn it on and off from there. As well as this, you just twist the top and it turns it on and get your lamp shade. Then what you'll do is finally you'll take your raffia or your jute, and you can create a wraparound if you'd like. You can use satin ribbon. You could tie this in a knot or a double knot and add embellishments to it, and then trim them, and you can create any design that you want to. Another option besides using the candle, if you don't have a candle, is you can get one of these little tea lights. They're battery operated, and they use these little lithium batteries. Just unscrew the bottom if you have to change them out. I keep these year after year and just buy more batteries. That way I can reuse them. And they just turn on. Some of these come actually where they're on a timer, and they go off after 12 hours and then come back on, so you never have to reach in and reset. And what I do is, like with this little container, I've taken a small piece of tissue paper and put in the bottom of the jar, and then just drop my candle in. That way it doesn't slide around. You'll do the same thing with this jar if you're using this method. Just take your tissue and kind of make a little bunch, and then we're gonna drop this in to the bottom. And here's where the wide mouth comes in handy, that you can stick your hands right down inside the jar and get that set. And then you're going to take your candle and go ahead and you're going to drop it right in to the bottom. Let's see if I can set that a little straighter. And then you have your little jar that's lit up. Let's see if I can turn my light off real quick. Isn't that pretty? And then for this technique, what I decided to do was use the ring and the lid that came with the jar. And you're going to want to cut a piece of material, any material of your choice, into a 6-inch by 6-inch square. And I've used pinking shears on the end. You can also pull this and fray it and make it look very primitive. And what you'll do is you'll take your lid and set it on the top. Put your fabric over top and then screw on your lid. And then you can leave it just as it appears, which is really, really pretty. Or you then again can take your jute and go around the rim of your ring and hot glue this down. You can put buttons around it. You can put, you know, filigree around it, which would be really pretty. And then you're done with this style. You can even put something on top if you like. One thing I do want to mention is when you're making this type of a project, don't ever put a candle, a burning candle, in this jar because of the glue and the paper. You don't want it to melt off the sides or heat up, and it would ruin your entire design. So always use the electric or the the battery candles, and they're just as beautiful, and then you don't have to worry about them. So that's it for our craft for today, and I hope you enjoyed making our 2-ply napkin jars, our little lamps, and I also did my little Christmas one hanging. I'm gonna call this in memory of my grandfather. This is my Grandpa Krieger, and this picture was taken in 1981, and he was an avid bow hunter. And this was his turkey. So while making this, and I saw this napkin and leading into our holidays for this year, I thought what a better opportunity to pay homage to my grandfather and bring out his picture and share his passion with you, and carry those memories along. So I thank you again for joining me at my Crafty Hen House, and I would ask you to subscribe and hit the bell, and you'll get notified whenever I have a new video coming up. I look forward to sharing more craft ideas as the season progresses. Until next time, thank you for joining me, and God bless.